She walked the same block every morning, slightly hunched, plastic bags swaying from each hand, and a scarf wrapped tightly around her silver hair. The neighbors smiled, some waved, a few children even called out her name, Miss Edna, as they skipped past on their way to school. She'd smile back with a softness that felt like a warm memory. Harmless, invisible, forgotten. But the truth moved under the surface like a coiled spring. To most, she was the quiet old lady who fed the stray cats and always had peppermint candy in her purse. But behind the calm pace and careful nods was a mind trained to measure angles, notice patterns, and count footsteps without looking. Today, her route was the same, but her gut wasn't. Something shifted. She couldn't explain it at first. It wasn't the weather or the traffic or even the silence behind her. It was a feeling, the kind only someone who'd lived too long on the edge could recognize. A parked white van 2 blocks over, unmarked, a black square panel on the roof pretending to be a satellite dish. A rear wheel with mud, fresh, wrong color for this neighborhood. She didn't stop. She didn't slow. She only adjusted. 2 steps left, 3 seconds pause by the corner store's window, just long enough to see the van side mirror reflect a shape. No, a glint. A scope. Someone was watching her. She exhaled through her nose. Just once. That told her everything she needed to know. Her grocery bags were lighter than they looked. One had nothing but tissue paper and a tightly folded Kevlar vest. The other held an empty jar and a weighted base made from an old dumbbell handle. She adjusted her scarf, shifted the bag to her left hand, and walked calmly toward the intersection. And then, the shot. It tore the air just inches from her left ear. Not a crack, no. It was a snap, the sound of a bullet moving faster than sound itself, barely missing her skull. She didn't scream, didn't duck. She didn't even blink. She bent down, slowly picked up a dropped apple from her bag, and placed it back inside, as if nothing happened. But she knew someone was watching. She stood up, locked eyes with the second-story window across the street. Her gaze didn't waver. She stared straight into the barrel of the scope. And she smiled. Not the soft, grandmotherly smile she gave the children, but the kind that said, "You missed." That moment changed everything. The sniper wasn't a rookie. Missing wasn't an accident. It was a message, or worse, a warning. A test. She turned the corner and disappeared into an alleyway, moving faster now. The scarf came off. The vest went on. She rolled her sleeves back and revealed faint scars, old burns, stitched wounds, reminders of who she used to be. Down another block, she reached her home. A faded greenhouse with rusted gutters and roses by the fence. She slipped through the back, locked the door, drew the blinds, and lifted a loose floorboard beneath the dining table. Inside were 2 boxes. One was labeled Edna's Recipes. The other had no label. It contained a matte black handgun, a folded map, and an envelope sealed with red wax. She opened the envelope. Inside, a photograph of herself, taken yesterday. She knew what this meant. They hadn't just found her. They'd been watching, waiting. She unfolded the map. Several markings, routes she walked. Grocery stores, parks, churches. There was a red X on today's intersection. This wasn't random. She checked the clock. 7:46 a.m. Still time. She grabbed the phone. A landline, untraceable. Dialed 3 numbers. No ringing. Just silence. Then a single tone. That was the signal. No words. Just a tone. She hung up and began changing. The cardigan came off. Tactical flats replaced her soft shoes. A small pouch around her waist held 4 smoke capsules disguised as cough drops. She looked in the mirror. Gone was the soft-eyed old lady. In her place, a soldier. And not just any soldier. Widow 9. The name once whispered through radio channels, feared by warlords, respected by field commanders, erased from files for being too unpredictable. She had no medals, no grave, no biography, but she had unfinished business. She stepped outside through the garden gate. Quiet, invisible again. 2 blocks away, the van was gone. But she knew they'd be back. The sun hadn't yet fully climbed over the rooftops when she took her position near the edge of the abandoned library. The early morning air was still thick with dew, muffling distant footsteps and swallowing distant traffic sounds. She crouched behind a row of cracked stone planters, her breath measured, her senses sharpened. This wasn't just a second attempt. This was bait. And she wasn't the prey. She placed a small mirror fragment between the bricks, angling it toward the street behind her. Nothing yet, no van, no movement. But instinct told her that wouldn't last. This wasn't over. Not after a clean miss like that. Miss Edna didn't believe in mistakes. Not from professionals. The sniper hadn't missed. He'd been told not to kill. Not yet. It was a warning shot. A message. We found you. So she crafted her own reply. She'd spent the last hour silently moving through side streets and backyards, changing her scarf twice, discarding the decoy bags, and setting a passive trail of powdered graphite on her shoes. Faint, invisible to the untrained eye, but perfect for mapping who might follow. She was still 2 steps ahead. Always had been. Behind the library sat an old boiler room. She found it decades ago when the city first tried to demolish the building. It was locked, boarded up, and ignored, perfect for staging. Inside, she'd stored a weatherproof case years back. Now, she opened it like it was routine. Inside, an outdated but still functional spotting scope, a rusted lockbox of analog surveillance tools, and a field journal bound in leather, worn from years of annotations. She flipped to a bookmark page. Coordinates. Names. Habits. There was again, Vulture Protocol. Her blood chilled. She hadn't heard that phrase in over 30 years. The last time, it had involved a failed extraction in Myanmar, a hostage who wasn't supposed to live, and 3 agents burned without ceremony. Vulture Protocol meant no survivors, no records, no exits. And now, somehow it had returned. For her. She adjusted the scope and scanned the rooftops across the block. There, a flicker. Not movement, but reflection. A brief shimmer from a rooftop ventilation panel. She zoomed in. It wasn't a sniper this time. It was a spotter. Young. Twitchy hands. Wrong gear for heat. A fresh recruit. She counted 7, then saw it. The ear tap. He was signaling someone. She smiled. This was going to be easier than she thought. Edna moved like wind through the alleyways. Her steps were fast, but silent. 30 years ago, she had learned to walk without alerting gravel. That kind of training didn't fade with age. The bakery across the street from the library had a broken security camera. She'd broken it herself last spring, just enough to blind the angle facing the alley exit. That alley now gave her perfect access to the spotter's position. She crept into the building beside the bakery, a forgotten tailor shop. The upper floors were rotting, most windows shattered, but the stairwell was intact. As she climbed, she could hear the spotter shifting. Nervous. Probably his first live mission. She didn't intend to hurt him. Not unless she had to. When she reached the rooftop, she paused. The door was slightly ajar. She peeked through the crack and saw the boy, no older than 22. Earpiece in place. Laptop open. His hand hovered over a key, ready to signal something. She threw a coin. It bounced off the far wall with a clink. He jerked his head, turned. In 2 steps, she was behind him. Her arm wrapped around his neck. Not to choke, but to restrain. "Shoo," she whispered. He froze. She took the laptop, pressed the key, and brought up the communication logs. 3 names. One she recognized immediately. Redmark. Her stomach twisted. Redmark wasn't a person. It was a clearance level. Black Ops above Black Ops. The kind used when a target couldn't even exist on paper. And now she was that target. She looked at the boy, his eyes wide. Terrified. "You don't know who I am," she said calmly. "But someone does. Tell me what they told you." I didn't know it was you," he stammered. Wrong answer. She tapped a command into the laptop. The screen blinked. Files began uploading to a proxy server she controlled. She didn't have time to sort through everything now. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said. "But if you follow me, I'll assume you've been turned." He nodded like a child caught stealing. She left him there. He wouldn't move for a while. Back on the street, the van had returned. It parked across from the post office, engine idling. 2 men inside. Military bearing. Short haircuts. No insignias. She walked past them on the opposite sidewalk. Didn't even glance. But she knew they'd seen her. She made it back home just before 10 a.m. Locking the door behind her, she sat by the window again. This time, she wasn't waiting. She was watching. Because now she knew. This wasn't a test. It wasn't a recon. It was a full activation. They'd opened the file. They wanted her erased. She placed a tea bag in her cup, poured the water, and stirred slowly. They would come at night. That was the pattern. Always at night. And she would be ready. The house felt smaller now. Not because of its size, but because of how much memory it suddenly held. Every creak of the floorboard, every photograph on the wall, every drawer she opened, it all came back. She sat down in her small, dimly lit kitchen, a steaming cup of tea beside her. Her hands, still steady, unfolded a faded manila envelope she'd retrieved from under the loose floorboard in her bedroom. She hadn't touched it in 23 years. Inside, a worn passport, a handwritten list of names and coordinates, and an old photograph. 4 agents standing side by side in a jungle clearing, smiling despite the mud and blood on their uniforms. One of them was her. Codename, Lady. They'd called her that not because of her manners, but because she never left a trace. In and out. Missions clean. Enemies confused. Targets gone before the second breath. She was elegant and efficient. That's what scared them most. She studied the photo. The man to her right, Thomas Keller, he was the first to vanish. Not die, just erased, like he'd never been born. Then came Nadia, then Jean. And now, it was her turn. Only one name remained. The one she never trusted, Director Vance. The man who built the Redmark files. The man who swore she would never be targeted. He lied. A soft knock on the door snapped her back. She didn't move. Second knock. Then silence. She rose slowly and checked the peephole. A teenage girl. Backpack. Nervous. She opened the door just a crack. Yes. The girl shifted awkwardly. You dropped this, she said, holding up a tiny black pin, round with a silver spiral etched on it. Her breath caught. She hadn't worn that pin in years. The girl looked her dead in the eye. Your name's not Edna, is it? She stepped outside, closed the door behind her. Who sent you? The girl blinked. No one. My father used to work with you. Lebanon, 1986. A memory hit like a wave. An intel drop gone wrong. A rooftop escape, and a man covering her exit while bleeding from the shoulder. You're Marcus Olin's daughter. The girl nodded. They said if anything ever happened to you, I should bring this. Who else knows you came? No one. I ditched my phone 3 blocks back. I took the sewer system. Clever. Edna sighed. Come in. Inside, the girl placed a small data stick on the table. Encrypted. My dad said you'd know the cipher. She plugged it into an ancient offline laptop. A terminal window blinked. Code required. She typed, Holospine 739. The screen flickered to life. Lines of data scrolled down. Photos, logs, memos. At the bottom, a countdown. 3 days, Edna murmured. Then full global purge of all Redmark entries. Total blackout. She looked up at the girl. They're cleaning house. You're on that list, the girl said softly. I figured. Edna leaned back in her chair. They're coming tonight. How do you know? Because if I were them, I'd use the confusion from the city's blackout drill. The girl looked confused. There's a drill? Yes, she said grimly. There always is before a hit. She moved quickly now, her body still light, her mind sharp. The back of her closet held a foldable go bag, cash in multiple currencies, burner phones, a compact pistol, and a set of keys. The girl watched, half in awe, half in fear. I thought you were just an old lady, she whispered. I am, Edna said, zipping the bag. Just not the kind you expected. They moved into the basement. The walls were lined with faded newspaper articles, dusty books, and an old radio unit. One that still picked up scrambled frequencies. She flicked it on. Static. Then 2 tones. 5 seconds apart. She nodded. They're signaling each other. Inbound teams in position. Can we run? I'm done running. She moved toward a locked panel behind a shelf. Inside, an observation feed for cameras across the block. She toggled through, then froze. Van. Different model this time. Parked half a block away. One man stepped out, then 2 more. Kevlar. Tactical gloves. No insignia. Not law enforcement. Not visible anyway. She leaned forward. This won't be quiet. Upstairs, the girl paced. What happens now? Edna handed her a slip of paper. Safe house. Code word is dandelion. Memorize it. Burn the paper. The girl read it, nodded, and flicked her lighter. The paper turned to ash in seconds. Go through the garden gate. Don't look back. If you hear anything, run faster. She hesitated. Will I see you again? Edna smiled gently. Not if I do my job right. The girl left. Edna turned off every light, opened the back door slightly, then crouched behind her kitchen island. The first footstep hit the porch wood at 1:13 a.m. Then a voice, cold, clinical. Target is likely inside. Proceed silent. She breathed out. 1, 2, 3. The door burst open with a violence that shook the walls. Edna didn't flinch. The first man in was fast, smooth, and tactical. She let him cross the threshold. Let him take 2 full steps into the kitchen. Then she moved. From Edna's gun, one of the few times she ever used it. Then there was silence. She stood in the wreckage of her quiet life. Kitchen stool overturned. Curtains torn. Blood already soaking into the floorboards. She stepped over the men. Calm. Not victorious. Just done. Her phone buzzed. It wasn't a number she recognized, but she answered. Lady, the voice said. Still alive, I see. She didn't respond. You always did ruin good plans. Vance, she said, finally. It had to be done. No, she replied. You chose to do it. Because you're the last loose end. And look what you did, Edna. You trained us all too well. He sighed. But it's not over. You know that. I know. I'm not coming after you again, he said. Because I won't have to. And he hung up. She left the house 30 minutes later. No sirens came. No neighbors stirred. These were men the system didn't admit existed. She walked to the end of the block. A rusted gate led into a narrow path, then into a garden behind a bakery. She waited there until dawn. When the girl appeared, eyes wide, still holding the burned scrap of paper, Edna smiled. You're early. I didn't know if you were alive. You won't have to wonder next time. We're leaving. 3 days later, they were across the ocean. In a small coastal town where no one asked questions and even fewer watched the news. The girl went to school under a new name. Edna worked in a greenhouse. Her hands still steady, still gentle. She smiled again, genuinely, this time. But she never forgot. One night, under candlelight, the girl asked, Why didn't you run that night? Edna took a sip of tea, then looked out the window. The wind moved gently through the trees. Because, she said softly, I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of dying without doing the right thing first. But Vance had been right. It wasn't over. Weeks passed, then months. The peace held, until one morning a letter arrived. No return address. Just 3 words handwritten in fine black ink. Found you again. Edna folded it calmly, placed it in a drawer, and locked it. She didn't run. Instead, she trained. In the quiet, early hours before dawn, she stretched. She ran drills. She taught the girl everything she knew. Not as a weapon, but as a guardian. Why are you teaching me all this? The girl asked one day. Because, Edna said, someday you'll need to protect more than just yourself. The second wave came in winter. They weren't as reckless as the first. They watched, waited, poisoned a stray dog just to see who'd come out to bury it, tapped phone lines, tampered with the market scales. Edna noticed. She always noticed. When the attack came, it wasn't at night. It was mid-morning. The market was full. Families, children, tourists. They wanted collateral. She was ready. A smoke grenade rolled through the street. Edna moved faster than anyone thought possible for a woman her age. She snatched the girl, dove through a stall, disarmed the first assailant with a broken umbrella. Chaos, screams, sirens in the distance. But no one died, because Edna didn't let them. By the time the authorities arrived, the attackers were zip-tied and unconscious. Locals claimed they never saw what happened. Just a blur, a shadow, a whisper of a woman who disappeared into the fog. That night, Edna and the girl sat on the roof of their apartment. The stars above them, the smell of ocean salt, silence between them. Will we ever be safe? The girl asked. No, Edna replied. But we will always be ready. And what if they never stop coming? Then we never stop surviving. Years passed. The girl grew. Edna aged. They moved twice more. Changed names again. But something had shifted No more attacks came. Perhaps the cost had become too high. Perhaps Vance had finally died. Or maybe the message had been received. One day, the girl found Edna sitting quietly in the garden. "You never told me everything," she said. "No," Edna replied, "because not all of it matters anymore." "Then tell me what does." Edna looked up, her eyes soft but firm. "Truth, loyalty, strength, and knowing when to walk away." The girl nodded. She understood. When Edna died, it was in peace. In her sleep. No gunfire. No threats. Just silence. The girl, now a woman, stood at her grave, hand steady, heart full. She wore no black, just green gloves, garden gloves, and beneath them, the hands Edna trained. Hands ready for whatever would come next.